Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good, let me encourage you. I was just about to say, let me encourage you to make your way to your seats, and then I was going to say, let's stand together, which doesn't make any sense. So let's stand together, and if you aren't in a seated position, in an area to sit down, come and find a space and to join us. Good. Special welcome to the children this morning. It's really good to have you in the service with us for the worship time, and so we're excited to hear your beautiful voices as you sing, I hope. And yeah, a special welcome to any new people. If it's one of your first times, it's really good to have you with us. Do come and make yourself known. There are welcome cards at the back. If you're thinking of, if you've moved here to Bucharest, we'd love to have your contact details, so make sure you fill those in so we can be in touch with you in the coming days. Let me read from Psalm 29. It says this: "Ascribe to the Lord, you heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon leap like a calf, Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. The voice of the Lord shakes the desert. The Lord shakes the desert of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forests bare. And in his temple all cry, glory. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord is enthroned as king forever. The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace." This is just a very small glimpse of the majesty and the splendor and the power of our God. And that psalm just starts by saying, ascribe to him glory and praise. And that's what we're here to do today, to give him the praise for all that he has done and for who he is. So let me encourage you to sing as we worship him together.
To the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise him, for he is your health and salvation. All you here, brothers and sisters, draw near. Praise him in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord, who will prosper your work and defend you. Surely his goodness and mercy will daily attend you. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do. Who with his love now befriends you. Praise to the Lord, who has nourished your life and restored you, fitting you well for the tasks that are ever before you. Then to your need, he like a mother will speed, spreading his wings of grace on you. To the Lord, oh, let all that is in me adore him. All that has life and breath, come now with praises before him. Let the Amen sound from his people again. Gladly wave love and let the Amen welcome his people again. Gladly we love and adore you. As we adore you, we adore you, we adore you, Jesus. We adore you, we adore you, we adore you, Jesus. We adore you, we adore you, we adore you, Jesus. We adore you, we adore you, we adore you, Jesus. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. So great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord.
Sing this to him today. Great are you, Lord.
Yes, great are you, Lord.
Great are you, Lord.
So great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher.
Sing that again.
Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. And I sing praises to your name. Praises to your name. The name that's so much higher than all names. All honor to your name,
Jesus.
all honor to your name. The name that's so much greater than all names. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher.
Be lifted.
Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Your name is life. Your name is hope inside me. Hope inside me. Your name is love. A love that always finds me. Always finds me. Your name is life. Your name is hope inside me. Hope inside me. Your name is love. The love that always finds me. Always
Your name.
finds me. Your name is life. Your name is hope inside me. Hope inside me. Your name is love. The love that always finds me. Always finds me. So be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher.
lift you up.
We lift you up. We lift you higher. We lift you up. We lift you higher.
We enthrone you in our lives this morning, God, again. We lift you.
We lift you up. We lift you higher. We lift you up. We lift you higher.
One more time, we lift you.
We lift you up. We lift you higher. We lift you up. We lift you higher.
We give you the
Highest praise.
We give you the
Highest praise. We give you the highest praise. Jesus, our Savior, you're worthy of it all.
Yes, we give you the
Highest praise. We give you the highest praise. We give you the highest praise. Jesus, our Savior, you're worthy of it all.
worthy.
You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Yes, you're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory.
So we give you the
Highest praise. We give you the highest praise. We give you the highest praise. Jesus, our Savior, you're worthy of it all.
We encourage you to lift up your prayers of praise to him now out loud. Yeah, God, we ascribe to you glory and strength. We ascribe to you the glory that is due your name this morning. Be lifted up in our hearts, in our ears, in our eyes as we listen and see what you would speak to us and show us through your word this morning. God, may this be a very practical way that we lift you up, that we give you our attention, our devotion, and give you permission to speak and to show us what it is that you need us to hear and see and understand this morning. And God, may we continue then as we follow out in obedience. God, may you be lifted up, not just in a song, but may you be lifted up in every part of our lives, God. We need your help for this, and we thank you, as has already been prayed, for your mercy and your enabling to keep us coming back to this one thing that we need, to lift you up, to live for you, to put you first in every way. So be lifted up, be exalted in our praises and in our hearts today, we pray. Amen.
If you can have a seat. Well, this morning I get the chance to do something a little different, a little special, in my opinion, something a little unique. I'm going to spend a few moments here, at least initially, talking to our children. Good morning. Let's try that again. How are you? Good. You're like, who is this strange guy talking to me? Actually, I want to ask real quick, if any of the kids want to join us, please feel free to do that. If there's any other children in the sanctuary who want to come down here and join us, please do. Come and join us. Got just a couple questions, some things I want to ask you, something special for you, and I need your help. Can you do that for me? Can you use your voice and say, yes, I will help Pastor Bill. Woohoo! Can you do that? Yes. Maybe. All right. We got at least one willing to do it. Quick question. Do you guys know what a superhero is? Yes. You do. Who's your favorite one? I got to think real hard. I wasn't ready for that. You got one, Ocean? The Flash. All right. Who? Groot? I'm not sure who Groot is. Somebody's going to have to educate me on that. You got one? Nope? Superman. Woohoo! All right, Superman. All right. Guys, come and join us. Come and join us. There's lots of place for you. Yes. Wonder Woman. There's a good one. All right, now I got a question. What would you say about spending the day with Groot or Wonder Woman or Superman? Would that be a pretty cool thing to do? Would you enjoy that? Would you like that? Yes. Yeah. Well, if you were allowed to do that, let me ask you a question. What would you be willing to give up to spend the whole day with Superman or Wonder Woman? Would you give up something? Homework. Yes. We'll give that up. How about, would you give up your toys? You give up your toys? Yeah. What about giving up your room? Yeah. How about your bike? Yeah. Maybe. No, we're not giving up the bike. No way. How about this? Would you be willing to give up maybe mommy and daddy? No way. What do you realize? Jesus asked us to trust him with even mommy and daddy. Do you realize that? He actually says something to all of us when he says this. He says that we are to seek his kingdom, what he wants, okay? Make it number one in our lives, the most important thing. And when we do that, you know what he does? He takes care of our room. He takes care of our bike, Imogen. He takes care of that for you. He really does. He takes care of everything, even mommy and daddy. But we got to make what he wants number one. We got to choose him above everything else. When we do that, guess what? You get all those things back. He takes care of them. He takes care of them for you. But it's by making him number one. How many of you want to make Jesus number one? Yes? All right. I love that. All right. You guys have been a great audience. I appreciate your help this morning. And I know there's some great things in store for you. back in the Sunday school room. So as you go, can you pick up your chairs and take them with you back to Sunday school for me? I really appreciate that this morning. It was great. You guys were wonderful. Exactly. All right. Well, we are going to start to try to do everything we can to include our children in our time of worship together. And so this morning, you got just a little bit of taste of what we're hoping to do as we continue to move forward as a church together. Well, with that in mind, I would like for us to turn in our Bibles to John chapter 11. We're going to continue along in our study in the Gospel of John. And as we do this morning, I hope what you're going to find is something very similar to what we just discussed with the children. Because I believe, ultimately, the reason why people respond to Jesus either in a positive way or in a negative way is because they're making a value judgment. They either value the things of heaven more than the things of earth, or they value the temporal more than the eternal. And so this morning, what I want us to do is to take a look at how people responded to Jesus and see what lessons we can learn from their responses and see if maybe we can't make a better value judgment about Jesus than they made in the Scriptures. So with that in mind, would you join me now in John chapter 11? We're going to start in verse 45. John chapter 11, verse 45. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." Father, we ask you to take your word now and to use it to communicate truth into our lives. Lord, I pray that in the midst of all that is happening in our lives, yes, Lord, we are aware there is a war happening around us. We are aware that maybe there are some in this room that are experiencing economic turmoil because of the circumstances of economies around the world. We are also aware that there are just certain trials and tests that we all face. And yet, Lord, we come into this room this morning and we confess that we want to be fed by you. We want to hear from you. And so, Lord, I ask you today to take your word and to minister hope to our hearts, hope to our lives, to help us to be more like you. I pray that you would help those that are struggling to find strength and those that are discouraged to find courage. Lord, I pray above all, just as we've been singing, that you would be exalted, that we would see that you are worthy truly of it all, worthy of anything that we may face. So, Lord, take these words, I pray, take this offering and use it to achieve your purposes in this room, I pray. And I ask this now in Jesus' name. Amen. As we begin this morning, I just want to kind of set the table by sharing with you just a couple of things from my own life. You probably have experienced these, I kind of call them unproven claims. Maybe things in life where people claim something really that is not really representative of what reality is. I remember going fishing with some people, and they go out and they catch fish, and then they come back to their friends, and the fish that they caught were wonderful, but when they go back to their friends, the fish that they caught that was this big suddenly became this big. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Well, I've also remember as I was growing up playing sports as a kid, I mean, a lot of the guys that I would play either basketball or football with, they would have extraordinary claims where they would talk about things that they could do in the weight room. They would tell their friends, yeah, you put me on the bench, I can press 150 kilos, no problem, until they sit on the bench and you put the bar on them. Then it was like, please, a little bit of help, because they couldn't manage it. I remember when my brothers and I were small, we were at church, and the church had a special program one particular evening. They had a gentleman who was a brother in Christ, but he had a ministry where he would use martial arts. He would use karate and judo as a platform through which he would share the gospel. Well, this one particular evening when he was at our church, he came in to do one of these things where he would show what he could do through karate and judo, and then he would share the gospel after it. Well, in the process of doing his program, before the service started, he had a really unique thing where he would put a blindfold on, and he would literally take somebody and have them lie down on a bench. Now, as crazy as this might sound, he would take a potato and he would put it on the back of somebody's neck. Well, this guy was so good at this that he could take a samurai sword, and he would either, with a watermelon sitting on somebody's stomach or a potato on the back of the neck, he'd put a blindfold on and he would chop it and the thing would fall apart, and he wouldn't even cut him. And it was an amazing thing that he would do. And he did this. He brought somebody up from the church, and he lies them down on the bench. He puts a potato on the back of their neck, and boom, and the potato comes in half, and it's wonderful. Well, going home, my brothers and I, trying to one-up each other, one of my brothers is like, well, I could do that, no problem at all. I can handle that. Up until my parents walked into the kitchen and found a potato on the back of my little brother's neck. Praise God, he still has his head. Well, you see, there's oftentimes these claims that we make that don't always match up to reality, do they? What I'd like to suggest is that our Savior made a lot of extraordinary claims that matched reality, claims that he proved. One of the most extraordinary claims is that the things that he did, the miracles, the signs, they were there to show us who he was. John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31, Jesus said the following, or John said the following of Jesus. He said, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not recorded even in this book. But these that are written here, these that we find here in the Gospel of John, they are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you might find life in his name. He was giving reasons to believe all throughout the Gospel of John. That's why we see Jesus make some extraordinary claims that he backs up by what he does. He makes 7 claims that we know as the, if you will, I am statements of the Gospel of John. I am the bread of life, John 6. I am the light of the world, John 8. I am the door of the sheep, John 10:7. I am the good shepherd, John 10:11. I am the resurrection and the life, which we see just a few verses earlier here in John 11, when Jesus is with his disciples in the upper room preparing for what is to come. He says to them in John 14, I am the way, the truth, the life. And then ultimately in the garden, I am the true vine. 7 extraordinary claims that he makes about himself to demonstrate that he is not just a man, but that he is God incarnate, to show us truly who he was. And then he backs it up, as all throughout his life we see in the Gospel of John, 7 signs that are featured to demonstrate that everything that he said was true. Because only he had the power to do these things. Only he could turn water into wine, John 2. Heal the Galilean's son, John 5. Feed the 5,000, John 6. Walk on water, John 6, 16 to 21. Jesus heals the one who was born blind from birth, John 9. And we see it all culminate here in John chapter 11 as he raises Lazarus from the dead, showing that he, and only he, has power over death. He didn't just make claims. He offered proof of what he claimed, that he truly was the Son of God, that he truly was God incarnate. Now, after all that, you would expect that the world would respond to that those who would see these things, that they would respond in a positive way, that they would see what he was doing and say, he must be who he said that he was. So how did they respond to Jesus? How did the world respond to what they saw? That's what I want to examine here for a few moments, and then I'm going to try to draw all back together as we take a little bit of a look at what we looked at with the children a few moments ago. How did those who witnessed Lazarus' resurrection respond? What did they do with what Jesus did? What do we see? Well, as we get started, I think you're going to see is that first, the faithful, they believed. The faithful believed Messiah. They believed in what he did, and they believed that he must be who he said that he was. Verse 45, many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. And he makes an interesting statement there where he says, many who had come with Mary. And if you flip back to verse 31 there in chapter 11, you get a little bit of context of what he's talking about. Verse 31, when the Jews who were with her, speaking of Mary, in the house consoling her, saw Mary rise up quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to go to the tomb to weep for him there. This group was hanging out with Mary for reasons that we don't specifically know. We don't know if it was just that Mary had a lot of friends or if there was maybe a higher opinion that John had of Mary. We don't know specifically why he points her out here, but there was clearly a lot of people tagging along with her, and in the process of doing so, they saw something extraordinary. You see, when they saw Jesus call out to Lazarus and said, "Lazarus, come forth," they saw with their very own eyes that he had power over death. And in doing so, they contemplated with their minds what that meant. They contemplated that if this man could have power to bring back to life one who was dead, he must have the very power over life and death. And so they ultimately chose to believe, to follow. And they demonstrated that not just with their eyes, not just with their mind as they thought about it, but they demonstrated it with their very life. So Mary, her faith, the ways that she followed Jesus, becomes true of those that are along with her as well, as they all clearly experienced what it meant to come into relationship with Christ. For those of us who this morning know Jesus in a personal way, we know what that means too, don't we? We know what it means to walk in relationship with him. They understood and we understand that Jesus truly is the only way to salvation. That's why Jesus would prepare his disciples for his final departure when he'd say in John 14:6 that I am the way, the truth, the life, and no one can have a relationship with me. No one can come to the Father. No one can know me in a personal way except through me. You have to come through me. It's the only pathway. There's not a pathway through Buddha. There's not a pathway through Hare Krishna. There's not a pathway through Muhammad. There's only a pathway through Jesus Christ. And those who were following him understood that. They understood that Jesus was also the only source. The only source. Peter would talk about that when he would preach in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 4, verse 12, when he would say that there is salvation in no one else. There is no other source other than Jesus Christ, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. The faithful saw. They understood what it meant, and they believed, and their lives were changed. But as we continue on, what you're going to also see is that the hostile to Jesus, those that were hostile, rejected Messiah. They rejected him. They rejected his message. And this is no different than what Jesus said would always happen. In Luke chapter 12, verses 51 to 53, he says, "Do you not think that I came to bring peace on earth? If that's what you think, you've missed the message of Christ. Because he meant to come and to separate those who believe from those who do not believe. No, I tell you, I came rather to divide. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." What is he talking about? Does he not want men to be at peace? Does he not want the war in Ukraine to come to an end? Certainly, he is the Prince of Peace, and one day everything will be at peace. But until that time, there is a larger war going on. There's a larger war going on for the hearts and minds and the souls of men. And as that war wages, there will be some that will choose to believe and some who will choose not to. And you see precisely the same thing happening right here. Verse 46. But some of those who came with Mary as she had been weeping in the house, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Their unbelief truly contrasted with those who had believed in verse 45. This actually fulfilled exactly what Jesus said would happen in Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16, 31, he says, if they do not hear Moses or the prophets, they've had all that they needed to know about me. It had already been revealed to them in the Old Testament. All they had to do was take it and apply it and believe it. If they don't believe that, neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead. And that's exactly what happened. Jesus literally brings Lazarus back to life. And the only thing they can worry about at this point is that somebody is messing up how things are supposed to operate. So they had to go and report him to the authorities. You see, their unbelief, it wasn't a lack of information. It wasn't a lack of revelation. It wasn't that they didn't know who he was. I mean, clearly. Who has the ability to raise somebody back to life? I mean, who can do that other than God? No, it was simply a stubborn rejection of the information that God had given them. They chose just not to believe what God had showed them to be real, what they showed them to be true. They came to the Pharisees because they knew that if they went to the Sadducees wouldn't want to hear this. The Sadducees were the politically oriented group, the in group, if you will, that was known throughout the culture as having political influence, but they were also known for the fact that they did not believe in the resurrection. So if they go to the Sadducees to tell him or to tell them about what's going on, they're not going to believe. They're going to simply say, okay, you guys have lost your mind. I mean, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as a resurrection. So they go to the Pharisees, who were more in line with the law of God, somebody who believed in the resurrection that would take in this information. And as they did, the true nature of the religious leaders starts to boil to the surface, starts to become clear here in verse 47. So the chief priest, talking of the Sadducees, this would be the high priest and the other chief priest of the temple, and the Pharisees gathered the council. This would be the Sanhedrin, and they said, what are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. They will come and they will take away our status before the people, our status of prestige, our status of people noticing who we are, and ultimately possibly even take away our nation. What were they worried about? They were worried that maybe, and all that Jesus was doing, that he might cause an uprising, that he might cause the people to revolt against the Romans. And if this happened, that it would ultimately cause them to lose everything that they thought they had. They were more concerned about the things that they had here on earth than they were about the things of God, the things of glory, the things to come. And as a result, the only thing they could see was the potential possibility of losing their status and their nation. Even though the Pharisees and the Sadducees were very different, even though they really didn't like each other, what was interesting was the one thing that united them was their desire to get rid of Jesus. They wanted him out of their life because he was messing up their system. He was threatening, if you will, their status and culture, having people make them the focal point of the culture instead of Jesus. And as a result, they saw him as a threat, somebody that they had to get rid of. But as clearly as you see here, they didn't know what to do. They knew that their status was at risk. They knew that possibly if the Romans got frustrated with this, that they would come in and take the nation away from them. And not knowing what to do, we see a man by the name of Caiaphas hatch an evil plot that ultimately culminates in our Savior giving his life upon the cross. Verses 49 and 50, but one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now, that's not to simply say he was only high priest in that year. It just means that John was pointing out in that particular year he was high priest. That was high priest that year said to them, you guys, you don't know anything at all. Now, tradition says that the Sadducees were kind of known for being kind of a crude group. They didn't really, they didn't know the art of diplomacy, if you will. Caiaphas is basically looking at the whole group of Pharisees and the other Sadducees, the other high priests, and he's basically saying, you guys are foolish. You guys don't know anything. Come on, get your heads together, guys. Come on, why are you so worried about this man named Jesus? And then he makes an extraordinary statement, verse 50. Nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. Now, I'm certain that Caiaphas, when he made that statement, he had no idea exactly what he was saying. You see, he was probably thinking either Jesus dies, either we get rid of him, or everything we love, everything we know, our nation itself, all of it will die and it will be lost. You know, ironically, we know that they put Jesus to death upon a cross just a short week later. And when they did, they probably thought that they had avoided. They probably thought that they had avoided all that they were worried about, losing their status, losing their nation. Ironically, in AD 70, everything that they were worried about actually happened as the Jewish people revolted against the Romans, and the Romans came and put the revolt down by destroying the nation. You see, Caiaphas, in hatching this evil plot against Jesus, actually did something spiritual that each one of us have been blessed by to this day. You see, when he said there, don't you know, don't you understand that it's better for you that one man should die for the people? He didn't realize that he was actually speaking the gospel truth. That plot that was hatched was something that the people became very aware of and that they responded to. If you jump down just a few verses, we'll come back to verses 51 and 52 here in a second, but down to verse 53, he says, so from that day on, they made plans to put Jesus to death. This is talking about the Sanhedrin, the plot that they had hatched. Verse 54, Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness to a town called Ephraim, and there he stayed with his disciples. What's he saying here? He's saying simply that Jesus understood the plot. His disciples understood the plot, and it wasn't quite time. It wasn't quite time for him to give his life, so Jesus takes himself out of harm's way so that he cannot be quickly arrested and they can quickly achieve their aims. He takes himself out of harm's way, but the people, they're hearing about this plot. And the plot starts to circulate, and we're going to see here in a few moments evidence of that in the last few verses of this text. And as they see evidence of it, people are going to respond one way or the other. They're either going to be on the side of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, or the religious leaders, or they're going to be on the side of Christ. They're either going to believe or they're not going to believe. But John gives us an extraordinary footnote. Verse 51, talking of what Caiaphas said. He says, Caiaphas did not say this of his own accord. Caiaphas didn't just up and decide, you know what, I'm going to say something that's directly in line with what God's will is through Christ. No, God had a purpose in Caiaphas saying that. Sovereignly, he orchestrated things so that Caiaphas would make an extraordinary statement that would be exactly in line with his will. But the high priest that year, Caiaphas prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. And then he goes on and he says, not just for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Now he's certainly talking about the Jews that were there in Israel, but he was also talking about the diaspora of Jews that were living in different parts of the world, that he would gather them together. And ultimately, what is he talking about? Jew and Gentile in one body, in one organism, in one church. Just like we are today in this room, one in Christ, that he would gather all together to be part of his family. You see, he could only achieve that by Christ's sacrifice. One dying for every man, woman, child that would ever live. Without his death, there could be no covering of sin. Without him shedding his blood, sins could not be forgiven. You see, Caiaphas had no idea that what he was saying would ultimately culminate in the death of Jesus Christ, which would be for our good and even for their good if they would believe. You see, his cynical words became prophetic of what God's actual purpose was. You see, God knew that he had to give to man something that was very unique, something that was needed so that you and I could receive the one thing that we needed most. You see, we could not be in relationship with God apart from him giving to us his righteousness. That's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, for our sake, the Father, God himself, made him, Jesus Christ, to be sin who knew no sin. The perfect, spotless, sinless Lamb of God, so that in him, through his death, we might receive what we need most, his righteousness. Because without his righteousness, not one of us can stand justified in the Father's presence. So through his death, he gave us what we needed most. Not only did through his death he give us what we needed most, he also provided what was not available before that. He provided a way. Remember, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way that is possible is through him. Well, through his death, he provided that way. He provided a way for man to be reconciled, to be in relationship with God, to be in friendship with the one who made him. Peter says it like this, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. Christ also suffered for sins once. He didn't have to do it twice. He only did it once because he was perfect, the righteous one who had never sinned for those that are unrighteous. Why? So that he might make a way to bring us to God. That pathway was not possible before he gave his life. Now it is possible for man to be in relationship with God. Caiaphas didn't know what he was saying. He had no idea, making that prophecy that day, that one man must die for the nation, that he was prophesying what every man, woman, and child would need, the righteousness of God in a way so that we could be in relationship with him. And through Jesus Christ, he did just that. Yes, they hostilely rejected their Messiah. But can I suggest that there are some who think that they're just being indifferent, that are not too different from the religious leaders? Because you see, the indifferent ignore the Messiah as well. If you move along to verse 55 in the text, it says, now the Passover of the Jews was at hand. Jesus hadn't been gone long, and the Passover celebration is almost here. And people are making preparation for Passover. So it says, many went up from their country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. That would have been like where Jesus was, people leaving the town of Ephraim or leaving the region. Maybe they were in Samaria or they were in Judea or wherever they were. They would come to Jerusalem to get ready for Passover. Maybe they were from another country. They would come to get ready. Well, as they would come, they knew that not celebrating Passover wasn't an option. So if you had a death in the family, they knew that that made them unclean and that they had to purify themselves. If they had traveled a long journey, they knew that they had to purify themselves. Moses spoke to this in Numbers chapter 9 when he said the following, speak to the people of Israel, saying the following, if any one of you or your descendants is unclean through the touching of a dead body or is on a long journey, he shall still keep the Passover. They knew that that was required, so they had to go get ready. And as a result, the city of Jerusalem is now teeming. There's a throng of people just rushing into the city, getting ready for Passover. Some actually believe that there was as many as 1 million people that had arrived in the city at that time, getting ready for the Passover feast. So what we see here is that the stage is set, that the throng of people is there to witness the greatest gift that man has ever received, to witness the culmination, the climax of human history. And as they come, we see people make their choices. Verse 56, the crowd, now they're looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple. So what do you think? Guys, what do you think? What do you think is getting ready to happen here? Do you think that he will even come? Do you think he will even come to the feast at all? I mean, after all, Jesus and his disciples, we saw that back at the beginning of chapter 11, they were worried. The disciples knew that if Jesus came back to Jerusalem, that something good was not going to happen. And they knew that that was about to happen in Jesus' life. And the people, knowing the plot that the religious leaders had put in place, they knew that the religious leaders, as you see here in verse 57, the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where Jesus was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. They knew about the plot. They knew what was going on, and they were making a decision. They were either with Jesus or they were against Jesus. They were either for him or they were unbelieving. You see, clearly they had opportunities to respond. They knew that he had brought Lazarus back to life. They knew that he had power over death. But like the religious leaders, many of them simply thought that they were maybe being a little indifferent, so they were kind of ignoring him, just kind of like a spectator at a sporting event, if you will, watching to see what the players on the field would do, watching to see what would happen, hoping that maybe they could see something that might excite them. Thrill seekers, going to the circus to see whether or not the lion tamer would tame the lion or whether the lion would get the lion tamer. They were simply there just to see what would happen. Their indifference really signified, really demonstrated a few days later when Jesus, after his time in Bethany, would ride that colt triumphantly into Jerusalem. And the crowds would rise up, this throng of people would rise up and shout out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Hosanna, simply a cry for salvation from temporal suffering from the Romans. They wanted to be free from the tyranny of the Romans, but their heart was far from following Jesus. How do we know that? Because just a few short days later, the very same crowd would rise up in the courtyard of Pilate and cry out, "Crucify him! Crucify him! We want nothing to do with this man's kingdom. We want nothing to do with his teaching." You see, if they truly understood who Jesus was, if they were truly believing, according to Paul, they would have never killed him. They would have never crucified him. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 8. None of the rulers of this age understood who he was, for if they had, they would have never crucified the Lord of glory. You see, they didn't understand who they were dealing with. He gave them not just claims, "I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life." No, he gave them proof. He showed them time and time again by sign after sign after sign, even to the point where it all climaxes in him raising Lazarus back to life. "I am who I say that I am." He gave them every proof. And they didn't just choose to not believe. Some who thought that they weren't hostile proved just how hostile they were in their indifference by joining the religious leaders and crying out, "Crucify him." Their indifference became hostility as they all turned against him. You see, the reality of it is that every man, woman, and child are going to make a value judgment about who Jesus truly is. And can I suggest to you this morning, every single one of you are doing the same. You're making a value judgment by how you live your life every single day as to who Jesus is. I want to show you through a simple story as we conclude how this oftentimes works itself out in our lives. I want you to move on to chapter 12. And in chapter 12, I want to read for you the first 6 verses, and then I'm going to make a couple of observations about it. Chapter 12, verse 1. 6 days before the Passover. This is preparation for Jesus' triumphal entry, preparation for his death, his burial, his resurrection. 6 days before Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, to the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha once again, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had risen from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. And I don't know if that was a dinner to celebrate what Jesus had done. I mean, my goodness, he had raised Mary and Martha's brother back to life, and maybe that's what it was, a celebration. I don't know. But so they gave a dinner for him there, for Jesus. Mary and Martha, they served, and Lazarus was the one reclining at the table. Mary, therefore, notice verse 3, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But notice, Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor. No, quite the contrary. He said this because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was being put in it. want to ask this question as we conclude. What set Mary's response to Jesus apart from Judas? What set it apart from the others that we see in the city who came at Passover? What set her response apart? Can I make two observations? Can I suggest that first, what set her response apart is that Mary's belief, it produced a heart of worship. It produced a heart of worship. She saw something in Jesus that was more valuable than anything else in the world. She found that pearl of great price, and she was willing to go and sell everything just to have that field where that pearl was. She was willing to give it all up for him. So she was willing to break that alabaster jar and pour out that ointment on his feet to prepare him, because she knew what was coming. She'd heard him say that he had to die. And she knew this and she believed. And so she was preparing him, so to speak, for burial. And she understood this. She believed that he said that he was who he said he was. And she wanted to do all that she could to follow, to worship, to give all for him. Judas, on the other hand, what do we see? Judas, we see simply that his unbelief, truly what he probably thought was maybe not very hostile, maybe just indifferent. He simply thought, well, that's not a big deal. But his indifference, his unbelief, simply grew a deeper heart of selfishness, of self-interest, of things that were just simply all about him and nothing about Jesus, nothing about heaven, nothing about the Father's will. No, quite the contrary from Mary. The only thing he was worried about was himself. Friends, can I suggest to you, in the world in which we live in, I think you would agree, we see the war happening, and things don't look great there. We don't know how this whole thing's going to conclude, but the current events, people that are innocent constantly find themselves in harm's way. Things are not necessarily going well. As you watch the news, you're probably seeing news from maybe your home country or maybe someplace where you identify with, and as a result, you're probably hearing about things happening even there that don't sound great. I know currently right now I hear about how people are struggling back in the United States because the economy is not going great, and as a result, people are constantly talking about their personal challenges. Maybe you are dealing with some news you just got from the doctor, and as a result, you're worried about what's going to take place tomorrow. Maybe it's something that you're hearing at work where you're wondering, maybe your employer is getting ready to scale things back, and maybe your job will be one of the ones that are in jeopardy. No matter where you find yourself, the real question is, are you going to say, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord? Amen. Or are you going to say, boy, Lord Jesus, you don't know what I'm dealing with. You don't know the struggles that I find myself in. And as a result, you get your gaze, you get your focus more focused upon the horizontal rather than the vertical, and things seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. Can I lovingly challenge you, if that's where you find yourself today? It's been well said, when life gets blurry, adjust your focus. Does the world around you right now seem kind of confusing? A little blurry? Can't figure it out? Adjust your focus. See, Jesus gave us the answer long before he gave his life, when he was with the multitude on the sermon, or when he gave the sermon on the mountain, and he talked about how the Father provides for the birds of the air, he provides for the flowers of the field. He provides the basic necessities that they need, and he basically says, if the Father does that for them, will he not do that for you? And then he concludes with these words, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Make your life's devotion about doing things for glory. Making the eternal the most important, not the temporal. Making the most important the vertical, not the horizontal. And when you do, he concludes with these words, all these things, food, shelter, clothing, will be taken care of. The necessities I will provide for you. But when we get our eyes upon the bigger house, the faster car, the promotion at work, and we make that our pursuit in life, things can start to get blurry because we are not in control of those things, are we? But when we put our eyes upon Him and make it about Him, friends, the things that we need to sustain life will be taken care of. Can I suggest that the reason why the religious leaders in the crowd in Jerusalem cried out, "Crucify him," is because they didn't value what they found in him? Do you value Jesus? Do you believe his promises? Do you believe his word? Because if you do, if you truly do, then you will be able to make that number one and trust that everything he said he will do. So friends, this morning, as a church, let's make a different value judgment than those that saw Jesus bring Lazarus back to life. Can you imagine witnessing that and still not believing? Let's make a different value judgment. Let's conclude that he truly does have the keys of life and death in his hand, and he is worthy of my worship. He is worthy of my life. And if he is, I'm going to live for him. I'm going to make him number one. I'm going to make his kingdom number one and trust that all this, he'll take care of it. And he will. There's not one of us in this room that are starving. He cares for you, and he will continue to care for you. Just make it about him every single day. And those things you're concerned about, he will take care of. Either his promises are yes, or they're not. Either everything he said is true or it isn't. Let's choose to believe that they are yes. Let's make the value judgment that he is who he said that he was and prove it by the way we live. Father, I ask you now to take your word and to help us, Lord, to make a different value judgment. To choose like Mary, to find something in you that is so worthy of all that I have, that I'm willing to give it all up for you. That I'm willing to live for the vertical rather than the horizontal. That I'm willing to live for eternity rather than the temporal. Lord, I pray for every man, woman, and child in this room. Lord, I know that there are some that are struggling, and maybe it's because of the war. Maybe it's because of personal finance. Maybe it's because of something else that's going on in their life. Maybe it's a health-related issue. Help them to see that you are the great physician, that you are the one who says that you will meet all of our needs according to your riches and glory, that you are the Prince of Peace over war and anything else that might happen. Lord, help us to trust you, to trust your promises, that they are true and that you will be faithful to every single one, I pray. Lord, as you do, may your will be done. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, just as you said. And we pray this now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Just going to sing through this song, which again is a song of surrender, following on from what we've heard. Let me encourage you through this first verse, just to stay as you are, and then maybe we'll stand together partway through. Take my life and let it be consecrated.
of your praise. Till every moment of every day I live for the glory of your name. Take my will and make it thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own. It shall be thy royal throne. It shall be thy royal throne. Till every moment of every day I live for the glory of your praise. Till every moment of every day I live for the glory of your name. Till every moment of every day I live for the glory of your praise. Till every moment of every day I live for the glory of your name. I live for the glory of your name. I live for the glory of your name.
As we go this morning, I'm going to ask a friend, a dear brother, who I know we have talked multiple times about this, to close us in prayer this morning. Stefan, I know you've shared with me multiple times how your heart is hungry and desperate for living for everything for Him rather than for this world. So would you close us in prayer this morning as we go?
Lord Jesus Christ, praise you for your holy name. I raise your name above everything in the universe. You are the creator of the universe, O Lord. You are almighty. You are everywhere. You are omniscient. You know everything from eternity to eternity. And you are with us. You are fighting with us, not against us. No matter how we look at things, O Lord, we can see what we see, but we don't understand like the people as we heard in the gospel today. We can see the powers and we can see the mysteries and we can see the wonders that you make, and still are we not always believing it. Help us to believe, strengthen our belief and strengthen our faith, O Lord, and fill us with your Holy Spirit. Let us give you all the glory in praise and in happiness and the strength to win people for your kingdom. Amen.
As we go this morning, let's live for the vertical, not for the horizontal. Go in the name of Jesus. May the peace of God be upon you. You're dismissed.